Good afternoon, and welcome back to the show. I'm Anna.
And I'm Brian. Today, we're delving into a concept that seems paradoxical: how to maintain productive, fulfilling daily routines while intentionally injecting elements of surprise, spontaneity, and renewal, specifically focusing on the weekend as a restorative force.
The modern professional is often trapped in what we call the efficiency treadmill. We optimize our weekdays for maximum productivity, minimizing decision making through strict routine. Same breakfast, same commute, same task structure. Psychologically, this is smart for work, as it conserves what social psychologists call ego depletion, the limited mental resource for self control and decision making.
Absolutely. Routine creates a framework of safety and predictability. Our brains thrive on pattern recognition. When everything is predictable, the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for higher-level executive functions, doesn't have to work as hard on the mundane, freeing up capacity for complex work tasks. However, this same routine, if unbroken, leads to two significant problems: cognitive stagnation and hedonic adaptation.
Let's unpack that. Cognitive stagnation means the lack of new stimuli. Creativity and problem solving often rely on making novel connections between disparate ideas. If you see the same things, talk to the same people, and follow the same paths, your input data for creative connection remains constant and eventually flatlines. The brain needs new information to generate new ideas.
And hedonic adaptation is the process where the psychological thrill of a positive change, a raise, a new car, a consistent Friday ritual, fades over time. That $15 latte felt like a treat on the first Friday, but by the third month, it's just part of the routine and no longer delivers a significant psychological boost. This is why we need intentional breaks in the pattern.
The weekend, therefore, must be treated not as 2 days off, but as an intentional disruption zone. It's a mandated pause button, a time designated for novelty and restoration. If your weekend routine is simply the weekday routine with fewer alarms, the same couch, the same screen, the same takeout, you aren't achieving the cognitive reset required.
We recommend what we call the triple R strategy for the weekend: rest, reflection, and re-engagement with novelty. Rest is critical for physical and mental recovery. Reflection involves disconnecting from work stress and processing the week's emotional input. But re-engagement with novelty is where the surprise and spontaneity come in.
Novelty psychologically triggers the release of dopamine in the brain's reward system. Dopamine is the neurotransmitter associated with motivation, pleasure, and learning. When you introduce something new, a new location, a new skill, a new conversation, you activate that reward system, essentially refreshing your brain's emotional palette. This dopamine boost is what allows you to return to Monday with renewed focus and optimism.
Think of the classic vacation effect. You spend a week somewhere new, and you feel entirely rejuvenated. Why? Because every sight, every meal, every decision is a new stimulus. We need to microdose that vacation effect into our weekends. The secret is that these novelties don't have to be grand, they just have to be different.
For example, if your daily life involves deep analytical work, your weekend novelty should be hands-on and physical. Take a spontaneous walk in a neighborhood you've never visited. Go to a farmer's market instead of the regular grocery store. Try a 20-minute dance lesson on YouTube. The key is to engage different neural pathways. The brain says, "Oh, this is new. Let's pay attention."
Conversely, if your daily life is highly social and active, sales, public speaking, teaching, your weekend novelty might be quiet, solitary, and reflective. Spend 3 hours spontaneously sitting in a library reading a topic completely unrelated to your career. Or visit an art gallery and simply look without the need to speak or produce. This provides a novel break from social performance.
The foundation, then, is understanding the psychological need for contrast. The more rigid and efficient your weekday, the more loose and spontaneous your weekend must be to maintain long-term mental health and creative output. Without this intentional contrast, the efficiency treadmill burns out the brain.
So, before we jump into the actionable tips for injecting surprise, our foundational takeaway is view the weekend as a deliberate cognitive pattern interrupt. You are forcing your brain out of its rut to restore its capacity for motivation and creativity. The routine gets you through the week. The novelty gets you ready for the next one.
And that leads us perfectly into our next segment: how to plan for spontaneity without destroying its very essence.
Welcome back. The foundation is set. Now we move into the core exchange, and this is entirely dependent on asking better questions. A good conversationalist doesn't talk, they skillfully prompt.
The golden rule here is moving from closed questions to open questions. Closed questions, yes, no, kill conversation instantly. Open questions invite detail, narrative, and insight.
Instead of, do you like working here? Closed. Ask, what inspired you to join this company and what has kept you engaged? Open. This invites them to tell a story about their motivation and trajectory.
Use the WH questions: what, why, how. What was the biggest challenge you faced on that project? Why did you choose that location? How did you manage the transition? These create conversational depth.
Another excellent technique is the deep dig. This involves taking a simple fact they mentioned and asking for a specific illustration. If they say, "We had a lot of challenges this quarter," you follow up with, "That sounds intense. Could you describe the biggest challenge your team faced and how you approached it?"
The deep dig shows you are listening, not just waiting for your turn to speak. It tells the other person, I heard the core of your statement, and I'm interested in the underlying narrative. This builds incredible rapport.
Practice the echo question. Simply repeat the last 2 or 3 words the other person said, often with the slight upward inflection, turning it into a question. If they say, and then the whole system crashed, you respond, the whole system crashed?
The echo question is pure listening validation. If a client says, and the budget simply wasn't there, your response of, the budget simply wasn't there, immediately shifts the focus back to their point and encourages them to elaborate on the financial constraints without you needing to offer solutions yet. It maintains conversational momentum during a mental block.
Nonverbal cues are essential for amplifying these questioning techniques. When asking a thoughtful, open question, nod slowly while they're processing the question. Lean in slightly when they begin their answer. This physical positioning conveys deep, genuine interest. It's called signaling alignment. We must avoid checking our watch or looking over their shoulder, as this immediately negates the verbal cue of the good question.
Let's discuss the psychology of the bridge question. When you link their past, physics major, to their present, marketing job, you are performing a mini analysis of their life and presenting it back to them. This makes the other person feel seen on a structural level, creating intimacy quickly because you've demonstrated you are investing intellectual energy in their narrative, not just their surface level answers.
Finally, the reciprocity rule requires practice. When the question comes back to you, what about you, avoid monologuing. Give a brief, authentic response, 30 seconds maximum, and then immediately toss a related question back to them. I actually found the transition challenging as well. I solved it by focusing heavily on delegation. What strategies do you use for delegation? The conversational loop is crucial. You share, then you serve the conversation back to them.
Welcome back. We've talked about asking questions, but the most powerful conversational skill is active listening. Conversation isn't a monologue, it's a co-created space.
Active listening is the practice of listening not just to the words, but to the meaning, intent, and emotion behind the words. It requires full, present focus.
The most common mistake people make is listening to reply, not listening to understand. While the other person is speaking, they are already formulating their next statement, which means they are only catching snippets of what is being said.
To practice active listening, you must engage in reflective mirroring. After the other person speaks, briefly summarize or paraphrase the core of what they said to ensure you understood. So, if I'm understanding correctly, the main takeaway was that the deadline shifted due to resource constraints.
Reflective mirroring serves two purposes. It verifies your understanding, and more importantly, it makes the speaker feel profoundly heard and respected. It proves you are processing their information.
Use minimal encouragers. These are small verbal and nonverbal cues that signal engagement without interrupting the speaker's flow. Simple sounds like ah, I see, and gentle nodding or leaning in. These are vital for maintaining conversational rhythm.
The goal is to make the other person feel safe and comfortable enough to share more deeply. When they feel their ideas are being validated and fully understood, they open up and the conversation flows effortlessly.
Nonverbal communication is critical here. Maintain appropriate eye contact, not staring, but consistent connection. Keep an open body posture, unfolded arms facing the speaker. These silent signals communicate trust and receptivity.
Avoid distractions. This is particularly challenging in the digital age. Put your phone away, turn it face down, and avoid glancing around the room. Divided attention kills rapport instantly. It signals that the other person is less important than what might be happening elsewhere.
When you hear an emotional component in the conversation, frustration, excitement, hesitation, acknowledge the emotion, not just the facts. If they talk about a difficult transition, you might say, "That sounds incredibly stressful to manage." This validates their internal experience.
Validating emotions shows true empathy. It moves the conversation beyond data points into the realm of human connection. People remember how you made them feel far more than what you said.
So, pause, summarize, use minimal encouragers, and acknowledge emotion. This holistic approach transforms passive hearing into powerful, engaging, active listening.
Let's detail the difference between effective and ineffective reflective mirroring. Effective mirroring is accurate and non-judgmental. You felt discouraged because the funding didn't come through on time. Ineffective mirroring adds interpretation or judgment. So you're saying your team didn't plan correctly because the funding was late. The latter introduces conflict and shuts down sharing. Your job is to reflect the message, not solve the problem or judge the facts.
We must focus on the specifics of minimal encouragers. Vocal tones matter. A flat is passive, an interested, slightly rising I see is engaging. Facial expression should convey empathy. When someone discusses a loss, a slight downward turn of your lips shows appropriate sadness. When they discuss a win, a genuine smile and raised eyebrows convey excitement. These physiological cues are often processed by the speaker unconsciously and increase their comfort level.
The psychology behind validation is powerful. When you validate the other person's emotion, that sounds incredibly stressful to manage. You activate the psychological reward system. The person feels validated, their emotional defenses drop, and they become more open to continuing the conversation. This cycle of validation and openness actually makes the listener feel better and more connected, reinforcing the behavior.
For nonverbal cues, let's specify eye contact. The goal is not staring, which is aggressive. A good rule of thumb is the 70-50 rule. Maintain eye contact about 70% of the time when the other person is speaking and 50% of the time when you are speaking. This balance maintains connection without becoming intimidating. Breaking contact briefly, looking down into the side as if processing information, actually enhances the perception of thoughtfulness.
Finally, to counteract the urge to interrupt or formulate a reply, practice mental muting. When the speaker is mid-sentence, consciously mute your internal voice that is rehearsing your response. Focus all mental energy on predicting the speaker's next word or sentence structure. This tricks your brain into full attention rather than defensive planning. It is a powerful mental discipline that improves retention and connection.
Welcome back. You can ask great questions and listen actively, but conversation requires two things: flow and reciprocity. You can't just be a professional interviewer. You have to contribute.
This is where people get stuck. They are so focused on listening that they forget to share. But sharing your own experiences is what establishes connection and vulnerability. The key is to share relationally.
Sharing relationally means connecting your contribution directly back to what the other person just said.
You are using their narrative as a launchpad for your own brief story, ensuring you don't hijack the conversation.
For example, if they talk about a challenging work transition, you shouldn't launch into a detailed history of your career. Instead, respond with, I can relate to that. I found the first 3 months at my last role were also incredibly demanding. Did you find that establishing boundaries helped you manage that?
Notice the technique: relate, summarize, and return. You relate your experience, you summarize it briefly, and you immediately ask a question that returns the focus back to them. Your contribution serves the conversation, not your ego.
Master the segue, the smooth transition between topics. Segues often use transitional phrases like that reminds me of, or on a related note, or that's interesting, speaking of X. This avoids the abrupt change that makes the conversation feel jarring.
The best conversations move in gentle loops, not sharp lines. You circle back to previous topics, referencing things the other person said earlier. Earlier, you mentioned your work on Project Z. How does this new challenge tie into that original goal?
Another powerful tool is the hypothetical pivot. If the conversation starts to stall or you sense a need to change the mood, introduce a low-stakes hypothetical question. If you could snap your fingers and change one thing about our industry, what would it be?
Hypotheticals are safe because they involve no personal risk, yet they often generate high-level, thoughtful responses. They move the conversation out of the past and into the future, creating shared imaginative territory.
Understand the 80-20 rule of sharing. Generally, aim for the other person to be speaking about 60 to 80% of the time, especially if you are seeking information or building rapport. Your job is to prompt and reflect, not to dominate.
And remember to vary your pitch and pace. Monotony kills engagement. Use vocal enthusiasm to match the emotional tone of the discussion. If they're talking about something exciting, your voice should reflect curiosity and interest.
Let's dissect the relate, summarize, and return technique further across different topics. Social example. If they discuss loving a new city park, you relate, I love exploring green spaces too. Relate, I recently found a beautiful historic garden downtown. Summarize, do you prefer formal gardens or wilder spaces? Return. Professional example. If they discuss a successful software launch, you relate, that's fantastic. Launch successes are huge. We had a similar big win last year after a major testing period. Did your team conduct rigorous beta testing as well? This technique ensures your sharing is brief and immediately relevant.
We must elaborate on effective segues. We have direct association. That reminds me of the article I read on X. Contrast segue. That's one perspective. A colleague recently shared an opposing view on Y. And the time shift segue. Speaking of next year, how do you see Z playing out compared to this year? Avoiding the abrupt segue, simply shouting a new topic, is vital for flow and making the speaker feel their last point was fully heard.
The concept of conversational looping is key to making the exchange feel cohesive. We must actively listen for small details we can recall later. For instance, if they mention their cat's name, Mr. Whiskers, early on, bring it back later. Given how much work you put into this project, you must be exhausted. I hope you get some time to relax with Mr. Whiskers this weekend. This small, unexpected recall built immense positive rapport.
Addressing the issue of domination, if someone is dominating the conversation, you need to interrupt gracefully. Avoid aggressive phrases. Use polite redirection, often phrased as a question. That's a fascinating point, and I want to make sure I understand the full context. Before you move on, could you quickly elaborate on the timeline for that step? This is a soft interrupt that validates their contribution but redirects the flow back to the listener's agency.
Finally, on vocal delivery, practice using a lower pitch when asking a reflective question to convey seriousness, and a slightly higher, faster pitch when sharing enthusiasm or summarizing a positive point. This intentional vocal variety keeps the listener engaged and prevents the conversation partner from feeling like they are talking to a monotone robot. Emotional matching through vocal tone is a sign of high conversational intelligence. Welcome back. Not all conversations flow easily. We need strategies for managing difficulties. dealing with sensitive topics, navigating disagreement, and handling conversational blockages.
First, the art of the graceful dodge. If a conversation veers into territory you are uncomfortable with, gossip, extreme politics, or sensitive personal matters, you need a polite escape route. A simple, professional pivot works best.
You can dodge by acknowledging the topic and immediately redirecting to a safer one. That's a complex issue, and I know everyone has strong feelings on it. Speaking of complexity, what are your thoughts on the new company policy rollout?
If disagreement arises, practice validating the person, not the opinion. You can acknowledge their right to their viewpoint without agreeing with it. I appreciate you sharing your perspective, and I see why you feel that way. It's certainly a complex issue. This maintains rapport while avoiding conflict.
The key to avoiding conflict is recognizing that conversation is often about exploration, not conversion. Your goal is not to change their mind, it's to understand their perspective. Adopt a stance of anthropological curiosity.
Dealing with a conversational blocker, someone who only gives one-word answers, requires persistence and creativity. Revert immediately back to the WH questions and the deep dig. If they say, "The meeting was fine," you ask, "What was the most interesting takeaway from the meeting?" Or, "How could the next one be improved?"
If that fails, it's time for a graceful exit. Don't drag out a dead conversation. A skillful conversationalist knows how to end a conversation well.
The graceful exit should happen while the conversation is still moderately enjoyable, leaving a positive impression. Use clear language. "I really enjoyed this conversation, but I need to go get another drink, catch up with a colleague, or prepare for the next session."
Always end with a forward action. If appropriate, suggest a follow-up. I'd love to continue this discussion. Should I circle back with you next week? Or let's exchange cards. I'll send you that article we discussed.
The forward action institutionalizes the connection and validates the time spent. It turns a casual conversation into a potentially valuable professional contact.
And your final move is the summarizing compliment. End with a brief statement reflecting appreciation for their contribution. Thank you for the insightful perspective. I really valued your thoughts on the market shift.
Let's provide additional scripts for dodging sensitive questions. If asked about salary directly, a script could be, "That's private information, but I'm happy to discuss general compensation trends in our industry, which are quite interesting right now. Did you see the recent report on X?" If asked highly personal matters, e.g. relationship status, "That's a topic I keep close to the chest, but tell me, what's something exciting you have planned this weekend?" The goal is quick acknowledgement and smooth immediate redirection.
The psychology of conflict avoidance through validation is critical. When disagreement arises, avoid using the word but. Instead of "I see your point, but I disagree," use "I see your point, and that is certainly a strong way to view the data. My perspective is slightly different, focusing on factor Y." The "and" accepts their view as valid, disarming the defensive reaction before you present your counterpoint.
For dealing with a conversational blocker, try the two-choice open question. If the WH questions fail, provide two specific directions for them to choose from. "I hear you saying things are busy. Are you focusing mostly on hiring talent, or are you prioritizing system automation right now?" This reduces the cognitive load of formulating a response and gives them an easier entry point back into the dialogue.
We need to detail several polite scripts for the graceful exit. Social event exit. "I promised myself I'd circulate a bit, but I really enjoyed learning about your work. Let me get your card before I leave." Professional meeting exit. "This has been incredibly productive. I need to catch the other team before they leave, but let's follow up next week to solidify those next steps." Phone call exit. "I need to jump to my next call in 2 minutes, but I have enough information to get started. Can I email you a brief summary of our action items now?"
The summarizing compliment is the emotional glue that sets the tone for the relationship moving forward. It must be authentic and specific. Instead of saying, "You were great," try, "I particularly appreciated your clarity when explaining the supply chain complexities. That made the entire strategy much clearer." This proves the attention was maintained right up to the final moment.
Welcome back. We've covered the tactics, questions, listening, sharing, and exits. The final step is understanding the long game, practice, and mindset.
Conversational fluency is a muscle. It degrades without regular use. You must seek out opportunities for practice. Don't wait for the high-stakes networking event. practice in low-stakes environments, like the grocery checkout line, the bank, or with casual colleagues.
Start with the simplest conversational openers in those low-stakes environments. Ask the cashier how their day is going. Ask a colleague about their weekend plans. These micro interactions build confidence and vocal dexterity.
Practice self-compassion. You will stumble, you will say the wrong thing, and you will have awkward silences. Accept that conversation is inherently imperfect. If you make a mistake, acknowledge it internally, move on, and do better next time. Don't let a single awkward moment define your entire identity.
Record and reflect. After a major conversation, spend 5 minutes reflecting on what went well and what you could improve. Did you ask too many closed questions? Did you dominate the conversation? Did you use enough minimal encouragers? Use that data constructively.
Vary your conversational diet. Don't always talk about the same topics with the same people. Expose yourself to new ideas, new people, and new environments. This broadens your base of knowledge, giving you more to contribute and more topics for bridge questions.
Adopt the mindset of a facilitator. Your job is to make the other person look and feel good. If they walk away from the conversation feeling validated, heard, and engaged, you have succeeded, regardless of how brilliant you sounded.
That mindset, facilitator, not performer, is the ultimate secret to easy, effortless conversation. It takes the pressure off yourself and channels your energy into the other person.
So start small, prioritize curiosity, listen actively, and practice daily. The capacity for easy, engaging conversation is within everyone's reach.
It's a skill worth investing in. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into conversational fluency.
Let's discuss specific practice techniques for the long game. Try the Topic of the Week challenge. Each week, select a topic entirely new to you. For example, Baroque architecture, deep sea biology. Commit to reading one article on it, and then try to work one open-ended question related to that topic into a conversation with a colleague. This forces intellectual range and reduces reliance on safe, habitual topics.
The practice of self-compassion requires acknowledging the spotlight effect. We grossly overestimate the extent to which others notice our flaws or mistakes. That awkward silence you agonize over was likely not noticed or immediately forgotten by the other person. By reminding yourself of the spotlight effect, you reduce the severity of internal self-criticism.
For the record and reflect exercise, use specific metrics. Give yourself a score out of 5 for 1. Ratio of open versus closed questions. Aim for 4 to 1. 2. Successful reflective mirroring attempts. Did you summarize their point accurately once? 3. Nonverbal alignment. Did you maintain open posture and eye contact? Quantifying the process turns a subjective failure into objective data for improvement.
Varying your conversational diet isn't just about new places, but new information consumption. If you only read business news, start listening to a history podcast. If you only read fiction, try an anthropology documentary. This creates the diverse mental pool necessary for generating novel segues and interesting relational shares in Part 4. The mindset of a facilitator means you're a connector of dots, and you need diverse dots to connect.
To embody the facilitator mindset, mentally assign yourself a new goal before each conversation. My goal is to discover one passion they have outside of work. This immediately shifts the focus from your performance anxiety to a mission of genuine curiosity about the other person. This outward focus is the ultimate antidote to conversational fear.
And remember the cumulative effect. Each micro-interaction, each successfully handled silence, each effective deep dig deposits a small amount of confidence into your psychological bank. Over time, this compounded confidence transforms your approach from fearful avoidance to eager anticipation.
We'll be back next week to explore the psychology of difficult feedback.
Until then, challenge your comfort zone.
Goodbye for now.